It reminds me of that routine you sent me with the really aggressive whacking partway through. Hello, and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive experience in both partnered and solo dancing. Cassie has about 21 years. I have about 23. We have a new theme tonight that we're going for. We're adding a new theme to our channel to make things easier for us, and that's going to be our favorite dances. This one in particular is the one that I chose. This one is one of my all-time favorite dances, and we are looking at Melissa Rutz and Michael Kielbasa from, what was it, San Francisco
Dance Sensation,
yeah
2013. We are now also doing, if there's ever another video or a topic you want us to cover in the future, please let us know in the comments below. All right, link is in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch, and when you're done, we'll get back to analyzing. To the screen share. Doodle-a-doodle-a-doodle-a-doo. Our plan for tonight is just to frame through as much of both of these songs as possible and talk about all of the gloriously wonderful things that happen. Mm-hmm. And as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask them while we're going.
So I think one of the things that I really love about this particular dance, well, both dances for this video, is how natural it is. Like, you can really tell that they're working with each other and working off each other, but really not forcing anything. They're both really going with the flow of the dance.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you can really see in Melissa's styling, especially.
Is my English rubbing off on you?
Apparently.
I'm so sorry. Last week we talked a little bit about the art of trading places in an underarm turn in our blast from the past episode, and I was saying they're still relevant. Hey, look, trading places, underarm turn.
Yes.
Ha ha ha. And you can see how Michael is really pitching and banking around the corner, like Matt Claire did last week in the dance that we analyzed then.
I also want to note how far Melissa is rotated into her arm right there as she's coming around. So she really stays here for a second before she rotates out of it. So you can really see right there, like, her chest is fully angled at her arm, at the inside of her arm. And that is something that makes it a little bit more of a dramatic open up to the audience when she rotates out.
Mm-hmm.
It's also something that keeps her more connected as well. If she were to be more open, it would not be as easy for her to hang off of the connection.
Yeah, and also Michael wouldn't be able to feel it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then another thing I wanted to highlight is the way she is shaping into the prep for this. Mm-hmm. So how would you describe it? Because there's a lot going on.
Yeah. She's really hanging back into his hand that's connected to her upper back, and then opening up because the way that she's connecting is on that left side. So she's opening up to the right side in order to sink into it.
Yeah, but she's not letting her elbow rotate away from her ribs. She's still sandwiching his hand. Mm-hmm. So her arm is rotating to the right with her torso, which is allowing the connection to happen. Because if she were to disengage from that, Michael would lose her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can kind of see based on where her hand is at, that left hand, it's kind of up on his arm a little bit still. So she's going to be using that inside connection towards him. as she's rotating there. So connecting with that inner elbow and inner arm.
Yeah, I absolutely love it when follows connect like that when I'm leading. It feels so good.
I think in general, extra contact is something that makes the dance better. Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah.
There's more stability to it. One thing that I love that Melissa does in this particular dance is she really has her moments where she knows she wants to take over, but she's letting him lead her the majority of the time. And like all of this, you can really see she's just following what he's wanting her to do. And she's just kind of shaping it the way that she wants to and following it the way she wants to.
Yeah.
And especially like this hesitation here that she goes into. So right here, yeah, she has a little bit of hesitation. And so she's kind of slowing down her rotation, really, and just staying up. So she's taking the energy he's giving her and sending it upwards rather than continuing it into that rotational energy, because really she should be following through with that rotation faster based on what he's giving her. But because she's taking that upward, it is releasing some of that rotational momentum, so she can kind of have this hesitation before, and it kind of allows her to decide where she wants to go with it afterwards. And she chooses to go into this little lunge backwards, which is nice because it's still following through with the momentum that she has from him. We have that rotation still in it. She's not just stepping out of it and going into an angle.
Yeah. Then I want to highlight here what Michael does to help facilitate her choice here, because they have some great both lateral and linear connection through this handhold right here.
Yeah.
But as Melissa goes into this lunge kind of backwards, you can see that Michael is resisting that lateral movement a little bit, and the hand isn't going with her at the same rate as her body moving.
Yeah.
So he is offering a lot of stability laterally for her as she moves into that lunge. So he has a lot of tension across his chest and arm through this section. And that allows for this release to be accelerated because there was a resisted release through those muscles. And when you, that creates like a loaded spring that you can then use to generate a lot of energy.
Yeah. And she also has another kind of hesitation moment out of it as well. And she's doing that in a different way than she did the first hesitation. This, she's kind of using him and resisting outward, I guess, is the way I want to say it. And she's using that stretch. So she's just kind of falling into that outward point.
And this is highlighting, like, both dances emphasize this a lot, is they don't keep themselves locked in a standard slot. They're constantly changing the orientation of their slot to the dance floor. And in a spotlight, that's something I appreciate so much, because not only does it allow them to take up more space, because when you have the whole floor to yourself, you want to use it, as much of it as possible. But if you're just staying parallel to the judges the whole time, that's not dynamic either. And so mixing it up just is amazing. I'm running out of adjectives tonight.
Yeah, there's a lot of rotational energy in both of these dances that it makes it look a lot. There's a flow to it that you don't always see when there's less rotation.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk about how Michael leads in this acceleration. So there are two things happen. He is accelerating Melissa, but because he also accelerates himself from one side of her to the other, it creates an optical illusion that Melissa is going even faster than she is. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind as a leader, because the faster the song, the more you have to help the follow cover distance by taking out some of that distance for them. And that's where trading places comes in handy. And so forth. And so forth. I told you my English was on point today. It's only going to get better from here. But anyways, it not only helps the follow not work so hard, but what happens when a follow doesn't have to work so hard, they can dance more. And it becomes a lot more playful. So because Melissa, or one of the reasons why Melissa is able to play here is because she didn't have to cover that whole distance herself. And she has the time to do that lovely shaping into his arm. Whereas if she were to have to end up over here, that shaping wouldn't have happened.
Right. And that's really just, a timing thing.
Oh, that was pretty. I'm gonna highlight it. Okay. So Michael is one of my favorite leaders because of how much of he is so precision with the energy that he uses and he leads with. He uses it like a scalpel. And not only does he do that with his leading, like he can get a follow to go exactly as fast and as exactly as far as he wants them to. It's magical. But he also he also uses it to manipulate himself. So you can see as she is wrapping up into his right hand, his right foot, is lovely line, pointed foot. But he is using her rotational momentum to pull him further around her. So normally, if she were not attached here, this is as far as his foot would go. But because he's holding onto her waist and she has that momentum for her rotation, he's able to literally use that energy to take a larger step and get past her. And I love doing that stuff as a leader. It makes you look so fancy, but I'm like, haha, no, I stole that energy.
I love the shaping in that sugar push that they go into, because you can tell that there's kind of an adjustment as she comes in and brings that left side forward. He kind of lets the right hand sink back a little further because that left side of her body is now further forward. And if he leaves it where it was initially going to be at, she's going to have a lot more momentum from the left side than the right side. And just because we have both hands held here, we want to keep it as even as possible.
Yeah. And additionally, I want to highlight when they actually touch hands. So count 2 is when he gets her left hand in his right. And as they're going into that shape, there's a lot of compression in that hand. He's not pulling her into this end range right here. You need to, as a leader, have a resisted release from that catch all the way into full compression through the 3 and.
Right.
Otherwise, a follow is going to be falling into you and they'll likely lead themselves and you won't ever get compression out of them.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I know that personally, if I am going into a sugar push of any sort or anything that I'm going straight forward into my lead, if I'm not getting resistance, I'm going to back out of that because I don't want to run into my lead. And, that's just a recipe for disaster in general. So.
Yep. Yeah, I operate the same way. And it's something I've talked about before because I'm about a half an inch taller than Kielbasa. And if he were to pull my hand here, I would be a drinking bird trying to reach it. So I often do a lot of shaping like Melissa's doing, but in an even more extreme version, and then give no compression whatsoever just to protect myself and to not end up in the bend and snap.
Not what you just said, but what I should add is that in general, follows are told that if you're not getting a direction from your lead to just keep going in the direction that you were given, you should do that, yes. However, if you are in a position where it's getting into dangerous territory, you might get injured, your partner might get injured, don't do that.
Yeah. Agreed. You always, regardless of how well something is led or not, you have the right to not follow something.
Yeah. In theory, leading is a suggestion.
Yes.
So
before we move on from this one, I want to just talk about how Michael leads this one. So they're on this slot right now, and they're going to end up on this one over here. So as Michael strikes onto his right foot for the end of the last pattern, he's very much moving laterally right here. And he makes sure to continue moving laterally. And that's why he ends up hooking behind with his left foot. If he had gone lateral and then linear, making an L shape, Melissa would have been like, it doesn't feel good. There is no clarity to that. For a one from a leader to be really clear, it needs to be one straight line. And that's why, oh, look, it's the drawing of the week, people. That's why he goes side, but he actually, his center moves at a diagonal towards Alyssa. And that's how Melissa is able to have such a clear one on her end. It's because of how clear that was on Michael's.
Right. And you can even see that initially she is walking straight back towards like RJ and Sean McKeever. And then as he is going backwards, she is now coming forwards, but it's a very smooth transition for her. And part of that is because he's making sure that she's on the right foot and not in a very awkward position. I should add to that and say sometimes you can be on the wrong foot and it's fine to lead into something else or lead forward or whatever. Sometimes it's not.
Yes.
You really have to pay attention to the shaping as well as the footing.
Yeah. Basically, if the foot they need to go in the direction you want to go already has their full weight committed to it, it ain't happening for you. So if anyone has all of their weight on this foot and you ask them to go that way, no, they would end up falling over and then using this foot to like trip in some way or shape or form.
It's like the foot to trip.
It's like just wait until I can demo this shit in person again someday. I do excellent physical comedy. But anyways, look, another trading places.
Yeah. And we also have a really nice extension of that movement from Melissa with her hand.
Oh,
So
the
that right
arc it
hand
makes is so wonderful.
continues. Yeah.
And it's not just going out and then back on the same line. It's going
Right.
out and then arcing in a beautiful, like, half of a figure eight motion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what's helping continue that momentum in a very smooth manner so he can lead her right out of that. And there's no jerking happening.
Yep. Michael's side together side skip is giving me strong Robert Royston leading Bryn Anderson vibes.
Yeah.
I'll try to remember to link that episode above for the replay.
The other thing I wanted to add is that as she brings that arm around, it's also dropping down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, otherwise.
And that's dissipating a little bit of that energy to keep it rotational.
Yeah, and also if she had left it up, either she or Michael's ribs would have gotten hurt, or both.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that ronde that he does.
It's so great.
I really love how he uses what he led to go into that. All right, so as he's sending her that way, he has some extra energy to really lean over that foot. Because he has a really interesting angle happening there. It's not just like foot and then directly diagonal upwards and like leaning out away from her. There is like a V or a curve to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because Melissa has that weight on the other side of him.
Yep.
That he has to be that way.
And this is one of those moments where the center counterpoint moves from the handhold to somewhere on the leader's arm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say this one is actually his center counterpoint, approximately right there in between his elbow and his shoulder. And this part of him is going that way with Melissa, and this part of him is going that way with himself.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry. I was like, what did I draw this time? Nobody knows.
Aaron says it honestly looks like a face. That's what I was thinking too.
I try.
We'll take a look at Melissa's eyes here. So as she's coming around, you can see she's watching where he's at because he's coming behind her. And as she's rotating around, right about here, you can see her eyes really far back looking for where he's at.
Mm-hmm.
And then as she keeps rotating through this, you can see she's paying attention to where he's at so that she's aware of where he's at in relation to her. So she can know that if she, can continue those turns or not. Because if he's not following her, she's not going to continue turning.
Right. And then I'll add to that she is doing this, but she's not spotting.
Mm-hmm.
She is looking back over her right shoulder the whole time and doing a beautiful sequence of like small chaîné turns. So that whole like only Tori can get away with not spotting. Not exactly true. It's a learned skill, being able to spin with control, either traveling or in place without spotting. It's just a different skill.
It is.
And for those of you who have bad necks, it's a skill worth learning. Because I know I speak from experience. I can spot very well, but my neck and my head scream at me if I do it. So I prefer not to spot. And you just get to a point where you're acclimated to it and it's safe for you to do.
Mm-hmm. And the reason that it's so hard on your neck is because there's that whipping motion of the head. Mm-hmm. And so because your head is moving at a separate speed from the rest of your body, so it's really, there's the neck that's like in between the head and the body. So there's a lot of twisting with it.
Yeah.
And it's very aggressive as well because it helps keep the timing if you're spotting.
Right. And the bigger a head you have, the heavier that is, and the more weight and torque
Mm-hmm.
on your cervical spine you have.
Yeah.
It does not feel good.
Yeah. Also, I want to add in that because of the way that she has her head right now, it's to the side and she's not spotting, but it's also arced back to help her continue following through that rotation. Right. So she has it leaning over that right shoulder, and that's kind of what's moving around.
And it makes an absolutely lovely shape.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that anchor. We have once again reached the anchors are out of this world portion of Nerdy West Coast Swing.
So this is a fun part because you really see that Kielbasa is watching what she's doing and then saying, oh, okay, she's taking some time. I'm going to do something too.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I like when leads take a moment to see, oh, my follow is doing something. I think I can do something here too. And it's, it's complementary to what the follow is doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in contrast with what she's doing. And it's nice because they're doing things at different angles.
Yeah, Michael's taking what she did as inspiration to make something of his own.
Mm-hmm.
And like this shape is the closest matching to what she did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's at a different angle and it's still musical. Yeah. And it's funny, this is something you and I were actually talking about the other day, how it happens a lot where a follow will do a very distinct singular styling. And then the leader, sometime within the next 8 counts, will do the exact same thing back at them. Mm-hmm. But psychologically, it can almost feel like the leader's mocking you when that happens. Yeah. And it's like, and also if the leader's going to do that, like, don't make a joke out of it.
Yeah. A lot of times it's used for humor purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as a follow doesn't feel great.
Yeah. Like, unless as a leader, that's like really your brand.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Brad.
It's funny. Yeah. Like Brad. Brad is amazing with his humor, and that's part of what makes him a wonderful leader to watch. Mm-hmm. So when he does something wow, I told you. When he does something like that, we know he's not mocking the follow, because that's just part of what he does, and it's part of the joy of what he does, and everybody enjoys it, including the follow who's following him.
Right.
But most leaders do not have that as part of their brand. Right. So it's just something you need to be conscious of, because it can make the follow feel uncomfortable and be like, I just did something amazing. And instead of adding to it or just letting it be, the leader could have detracted from it or made them feel uncomfortable. So something to think about. And that goes in both directions.
Right.
If a leader does something incredible and the follow does the same thing in any sort of mocking manner, or it could go the other way, like where they're trying to show up the leader, like, don't do that either. Don't show up your partner. just no, we're in this together. All right, second song. Now, this month on our Nerdy West Coast Swing Patreon page, where we actually do a theme that we go into depth about every month, this last month / this month, because holidays, so that was special, we were talking about musicality, and we actually went deep on this particular song, Hotel by Greaves, and we did an analysis of the music and a short choreography. But with the analysis of the music, both Alicia and I did handmade animations analyzing the song in a visual manner. And we're probably going to do a little free tiny teaser of it on our YouTube in the near future for people to see.
Yeah.
But it's really cool. And for those of you who are part of the Patreon, if you have not seen it yet, what is wrong with you? It's so good.
So I want to look at that shape that Melissa does really quickly. So coming into this right here, so she really goes from side to side. So she has that right side forward first, and now she's rotating into that arm with the left side coming forward, and then going back, rotating open to the right. And that gives it a lot of extra momentum to work with.
Yeah, let's see if I can get. I love the way she leads with her hips for a lot of her styling and shaping. It's just, I love it so much.
Yeah. It adds something in terms of just like the shaping of what she's doing, but it changes the energy that she has and that she's giving her lead to an extent.
And then here we're gonna turn on ghosting because I can. How many do we want? Let's do 3. There we go. So it's actually interesting how it follows one of the principles of animation. And when I say that principles of animation, I mean like Disney 9 Old Men, imitation of life. And so we have this overlapping action. So she went straight and then she went curved, and then it overlapped into a C curve, and then it went back the other way. It's kind of like how in a grapevine is a way of conserving energy with your footwork, because you're not having to fight the momentum of which side of your body is progressing, because they're taking turns. It's a similar way to her shaping. She's using natural physics to create her shaping and natural cause and effect. So she's only really having to like purposefully like initiate a movement and just follow through with it. And aren't we talking about follow through next week?
I think it's next week. Yeah. I'm not
Please hold.
It's in the upcoming weeks.
Oh, that's in 2 weeks. Next week we're talking about anchors, because
right.
You can never talk too much about anchors in a West Coast swing.
I want to go back for a second and look at what she does there
for the anchor.
So what Melissa's really good at is like hanging off of the end of the connection. And so kind of you can really see what happens here, because she has really like she sits into this where she's leaning away with the top of her like shoulder area, but her hips are the opposite direction. But then she lets it like sink underneath her. So she's not changing the way that she's like hanging off of that connection, right? So it's still there, and she's actually just increasing the weight on the outside of it because of the hip swing.
Then I want to talk about how Michael is countering that on the other end. Because again, you can tell the way he's looking at her, he's really paying attention and wants to make sure that she has the space to do what she wants.
Right.
And then right here, the way he settles or preps for this anchor right here. So his hips are up in that direction, ready to swing this way. He brings his left foot forward and across and towards us in the camera for the one. But because of all of the tension in the handhold, he doesn't have the ability to actually bring his center further towards us. So he ends up rotating backwards and trading places with Melissa instead.
Right. And he's kind of mimicking what she's doing with that hip movement where it's inside, outside.
Yep.
And that adds a lot of extra, what do I want to say? Kind of extra prep to the connection.
Yeah. And actually, so they've hit like max tension at this moment. And there's so much tension built up that all they have to do is release that tension and they'll both move.
Yeah.
So he basically brings the hands maybe like an inch towards himself, and that's all it takes. But in order to do that, he's moving towards his hand. Right. And basically, the point I am trying to make is you can't just suddenly come towards your follow. Like if there weren't tension here and Michael would be like, charge! Melissa would just, nope, run on out of that situation.
That is accurate.
Yeah. So, and it's not, he's not pulling either. There is a loaded spring here.
Right.
And he's using that loaded spring to lead her.
Yeah. And I want to add in that particular position where they're fully extended basically is not something that you see super frequently from either of them. They both tend to dance with their frames more in so that they have that space if they need to. But like this is not something that you will constantly see.
I love how Melissa adds her head tilt backwards to shape into that one.
And also it adds a little bit of extra weight back.
And
it kind of helps her kind of sit back a little bit longer before he is bringing her forward and rotating her. So it's almost like the hips come forward first and then the head and the foot follow.
Oh, I love how Michael counterbalances her again with his free leg for a ronde. The really cool thing as a leader about using a ronde motion to counterbalance a follow is it's very variable. So you can make so many micro adjustments. So you can see he starts fairly upright, a slight plie into his standing leg. But as he is counterbalancing Melissa and then leading her down the slot again, he plies even further into his leg and extends his free leg even further away. And that creates more power.
And I also like that because she is being prepped for what could be quite a bit of energy, but as she spins, she really lifts up and really has that hesitation again.
In slow motion, I half expected him to grab her leg and pick her up. Like it looked like that kind of prep. Also, really random side note, if you have not followed Michael Kielbasa in shadow position before, you have not lived. It's I don't know. There's something about shadow position that I just like despise as a follow. And I think it's just because I am usually a lot larger of a person than my leader. And so I'm like, am I gonna step on them and kill them? But also just the way Michael leads those positions, there is so much security and no ambiguity to where he is through the way he's holding, wrong end of the pen, hand and then forearm across her back.
Right. Aaron said a what? I'm assuming in reference to shadow.
Shadow position. Yeah. So, but yeah, this kind of position, usually this hand and this hand are connected around here somewhere, but this is the same as what we normally see, but this still counts as shadow position because you're side by side and both facing the same direction, and usually the follow is slightly in front of and to the side of the leader. And I don't think I've ever actually asked someone who would know which one is supposed to be the shadow. Not that it matters. I'm just overly curious now. Because, when an underarm turn, the arm to which the name is referring is the leader's arm.
Yeah.
So by that logic, we will conclude that the leader is the shadow.
Sure. Let's go with that.
I'm so tired.
I really love this particular part here. First of all, there's a lot of energy that he gives her into those rotations. But then as she comes out of it, she really calms down and then makes something playful from it.
Yeah, and this is what we were talking about last week, except it's with the other hand. So Michael has his hand attached to her hand, but you can really see it's his arm across her back. That's creating all of that connection, and he's releasing it from there.
Yeah, it's not from pulling his hand.
Nope.
Yeah, she has a lot of momentum right here. And you can kind of see even just how quickly she's traveling, but then also because she gets into an angle. Typically when there's a lot of momentum, like a really quick spin, you'll see follows that end up kind of at an angle with the head slightly off of the feet.
Yeah, and that's because we plant the feet ground down, but the upper body keeps going. I dream of walking with this much confidence.
Which one?
That's fair. That is fair. I think I've already got Michael level down. It's just something extra.
You're wanting Melissa level confidence?
Yeah, I want some Melissa level. I do a great impression of Michael Kielbasa's wink and nod, by the way, if anybody wants to be amazed when you can see me in person again.
Melissa's confidence is a little extra because she knows he's going to follow her.
That's it. It's a headspace. Yeah, he'll follow me.
Yep.
I'll just go this way. Cool. All right, I'll try that. When I can dance with a human again.
But I also love how he kind of mimics what she's doing.
Yeah.
In terms of that, I don't know what kind of walk I want to say this is.
The other boogie?
It's not really anything. It's just stylized.
Yeah. So Alicia and I were just chatting because we're friends too. We're not just business partners. We're not just dance teachers. But we for some reason got onto the topic of associating pros with candies. And we won't bore you with that right now. We'll just plant it in your brain. Have fun with that. It's a really enjoyable thing to discuss which candy is who. Because there are some very appropriate matches. It's great. Anyway, onward.
Aaron said, no. Keep going. I'll just tell you that we came up with some great ones.
Oh, yeah.
And there was one in particular that we said at the exact same time.
Oh, who's the Snickers? I don't think we got around to a Snickers bar.
I think so.
I'll have to think. We will get back to you. All right.
Well, we'll come out with a list for you.
Yeah, we'll come out with the list. Yeah, fantasy football, the candy. I don't know. I really, someone should like put me to sleep right now. I should not be talking. Anyways, I love this wrap right here out of the open whip. And you'll see how Michael is very much bringing the hand Nerdy West Coast Swing Candy edition. Where the sugar is too much.
That sounds like something that we would have Chris join us for.
Yes. Come back for a candy edition, Chris. Anyways, what I love here is Michael is bringing the hand down the slot, but then he really like brings it straight upwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that dissipates the energy and makes this the dominant connection. So that way this hand can be a face loop.
Mm-hmm.
Because you cannot turn a hand that is leading a turn immediately into a face loop. There has to be some sort of neutralization of the connection first. Otherwise, you'll have one very angry follow on your hands. Literally. Or your hands. Anyways, I'm going to stop talking.
I love that there's kind of a release, but then they both kind of wait almost to see where we're going with this.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because this is both of these dances. A lot happens, but they both have really focused, mindful patience in the partnering. And that's one of the things that makes it so magical.
Mm-hmm.
And I meant to mention this before, but they both do a really good job of matching the other's level changes.
Yeah. Is this where they go into that hand thingy? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe.
Where there's a lot of arm and hand waving.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's this yet.
I know it's coming up here shortly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because all right, here. Okay, I'm going to come here. Also, Michael's face through this section. Great.
I know. I was just going to comment on that.
And Melissa becomes Neo. Am I wrong, though?
Not really. I love that he just kind of waits and then looks at the audience and is like, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right.
This is good. It's even better in slow motion.
I know, right? But he doesn't rush her to come out of that. He's just like, okay, I'll wait for you. Oh, I love this section. Also, her foot is just divine right here.
Such a lovely point. And I love that he sees what she's doing, does something similar, and then as soon as he's there, she's like, all right, on to the next thing.
I know, right?
But he does a great job of like mimicking what she's doing.
Yeah.
Like he's barely even like half a second behind her on what she's doing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the way he so they're walking, but he's like, okay, I gotta anchor this. And the way he pivots to the left and starts braking with his right foot out ahead of his body.
Yeah.
And then he collects. And then this contra right here. Ew. Oh, so good. And you can see how the rotation of his body creates like a U-shaped path.
Yeah.
For Melissa through her anchor. bringing her onto one slot to the side of the one she was just on.
Mm-hmm. Not like majorly to the side, but
Yeah.
barely.
Yeah. So if we think of her feet in parallel, and then we've got this slot, basically this foot goes here, replaces where the left foot was, and then her left foot is now here,
Mm-hmm.
and the slot is now there. So they're sharing one original rail,
Mm-hmm.
but they've shifted over just one.
Yes. That makes it look so clear.
You're welcome. One of these days I'll color code. I need to remember. I've got colors at my disposal. I could be like, hey, let's try pink. Pink, but now will I remember? One of these days.
I think, let's see here. I think like right around here is what I was talking about.
The arms.
Yes.
We
Yes,
got some.
So it's funny because it like starts because she does kind of a flowy arm out of this and then just kind of continues.
But wait, there's more.
And then he's like, oh, okay, well, you're doing something with your arm. I guess I should too. And so if you look at his left hand, he's expecting her to do something with it. And then she doesn't. And he's like, all right, well, free arm. And then we just have a bunch of arm.
So much arm.
It's great though. But I love that because he like shouldn't do exactly what he was expecting. He went with it.
Mm-hmm.
And also ended up kind of mimicking what she was doing. So it looks like a lot of cohesive movement.
Right. Yeah, it's better to finish the movement you were doing than it is to abruptly go, oh,
yeah.
And suddenly change to something else.
I'm not entirely sure what happened there because he does have his hand up initially. And she is going up with her hand. And then they're just like, nope.
I think basically Melissa was like, yeah, I'm feeling this part. Sorry, I'm leaving now for
like she kind of goes for it. And then she's like, no.
And then notice how like there's a lot of this where they're just kind of dancing next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this moment where she checks back into the connection.
Yeah. Yeah, they have quite a few moments where they get into like a little bit of a neutral connection because they're both doing something individually that is similar. But then, like you just said, there's that moment of checking in.
Yeah.
So that, okay, now you can lead me into whatever's next.
Mm-hmm.
And I do prefer it that way, where if the follow is doing something styling wise, whatever, and the follow, I feel like needs to give a moment of, okay, I'm ready to do the next thing, rather than I don't like it as much when the lead decides to take the follow out of what she's doing or
right.
doing.
Right. And I appreciate how Melissa, instead of just exiting herself and then reconnecting at the end of the slot, she reconnects here in the middle of the pattern.
Yeah.
That's very pink. I kind of like it. Then I want to highlight how, as Melissa is ducking under this hand, Michael's right hand turns so that his thumb would be pointing down towards the floor. And so as she does this roll, she's actually rolling off the back of his hand instead of the front. So that way he still is giving her that stability, hugging around her ribs, even though it's an awkward shape for him. So he was prioritizing her, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and that I think is important because if you look, she's kind of getting into like an angled position. And so if he isn't necessarily supporting her, it's going to be a lot harder for her to like reground herself and get her feet right back up under her. And that's something that I notice sometimes when I'm following something where I am being put off of my feet, like my head is not over my feet. I end up at the other end of it, and my lead is like, all right, you're on your own.
Yeah.
That always gives me a little bit of a heart attack. Like I'm usually prepared for it, but at the same time, I would rather have some support somewhere.
Agreed. I always err on the side of a little too much support as a leader than too little, because like I always want my follow to feel safe and secure and like I've got them, and that if worst case scenario some extraneous circumstance were to happen and I would need to like take on their whole body weight, I am there.
Yeah, more prepared for it.
Yeah, usually the only time I fail at that is when my lovely hyperextended knees lock out on me without my permission.
Yeah. I love that Melissa takes this and kind of changes what's happening and makes it into a walk or something that's not quite as flowing. Because we have this lovely rotational energy. And she kind of, you can see she comes up and dissipates that energy a little bit. And that allows her to take it and make it into something different. She makes it a little bit more staccato, very sharp.
Yeah, and you can see the way she's doing that with the connection. So if we watch Michael's right hand, you can tell right through here he's really trying to send it that way, but you can watch as Melissa's arm goes from bent to straight. So she's stopping the progression a little bit, and Michael catches in on that, and then it turns into tension.
Well, and it's also, so if you watch her, she has, her feet are moving further than her like head and arm. So she's really breaking that. So the foot is helping break, and the arm being straighter is helping brace that. So there's a connection from that heel to the hand.
Yep.
To tell him that I'm slowing down. And she does stay in that kind of angle this whole time until she moves forward.
All right. Shall we call it a night since we have gone over? All right.
Yep. Let's see. What are we doing next week? We're doing anchors.
The difference between holding your own weight and settling into the connection, and uses for both, because they both become relevant. So yeah, that's going to be fun. And then I think the week after that, we're talking about finishing movement.
Yeah.
If I'm correct. And then we're also planning sometime in the future-ish to do a compare first place of all of the divisions at one event against each other. So like all of the first place Jack and Jills at Boogie or Keppel, for example. We thought that would be a fun way to compare and contrast the different levels.
Talk about where you should be at each level to an extent, and just look at what's happening in each level currently. For joining us, and hopefully,
do you have a question, Andrew?
I have a question. I just have a comment about earlier when you were talking about the mocking thing. One of my favorite Jack and Jills is Ben and Tori from Switzerland. And like the top comment on that video is like this guy saying, it seems like Ben just copies whatever his follower does. And then Ben commented underneath it, he's like, slight correction. He said, I do what they do, I do it worse, and I get more laughs. So
yeah,
that's
his thing. So
yeah,
I mean,
that's like him and Brad. That's their thing.
Yeah,
and it's great.
I think that is it makes it more expected. So it's not like in specific to whoever they're dancing with,
right?
So
and because it's part of their brand, you expect it. It's like if John Lindo were to get on the floor and not strut, you'd be disappointed. I know I would be disappointed. So it's from the people who do not yet have a brand that we're like,
yeah. It's actually kind of similar to when we were talking about the difference of like masculine and feminine styling, where if, somebody does something that's very opposite of what they generally do, it's like, oh, okay, kind of different. It's like a very different feel to it all of a sudden for no particular reason.
Yeah.
A lot of times. So
yeah. Expectations play a large role in this dance. And then at an additional level, this is something I always tell my students, if I have like broken down their connection and built it up again from the ground up, I'm going to tell them it's going to take people a few months to get used to you dancing this way now. So it might feel awful for a while, and that's not you. Yes, you're learning and you're improving on the thing I just taught you, but just because people are used to dancing with you a certain way means it's going to take them time to adjust to the new connection you are offering. So there's going to be a disconnect.
Yeah.
Literally for a while.
And, I think that goes even with like, if you're a lower level dancer dancing with a higher level dancer that you frequently do, that higher level dancer is probably used to adjusting to you in specific ways. And so once you are no longer doing that, it's probably going to take a little bit of time for them to be like, oh, okay, I don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Makes no difference, but
yeah. Anyways, just something to keep in mind when you're changing something and when we can dance together again.
Yeah.
If you experience frustration with the thing you just learned, it's because you're not in a vacuum. You're dancing out in the wild and you just threw in a brand new variable that no one expected.
Yeah, like in that case, you might have better dances with people you don't frequently dance with.
Yeah.
And it's not because those people are better dancers than the people that you generally dance with. It's just that
they don't have expectations
to adjusting a certain way.
Yeah.
So
yeah, anyways. That's why two people can have drastically different testimonials of dancing with the same person.
Very true.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of Chris being like, I thought I was heavy, but no. I'm like, same, dude. Same.
Yeah. It's a whole different story when you're being launched across the floor all the time. You get somebody that doesn't do that and you're like, wow, that's really light.
I still remember one of the times one of my friends here in Portland led me in a hip catch, but he's much shorter than me and he gave me a lot of momentum. So I unrolled from the arm wrap into a large sidestep. But halfway through that sidestep, like he's supposed to, he grabbed onto my hip so he could, in theory, slow me into that weight transfer. But unfortunately, my step was much larger than his, so I ended up just launching him down the slot. He like Spider-Man, just like I webbed him.
You webbed him.
I webbed. Yes, it was great. My English is great. My analogies are great. We're not going to talk about it ever again.
Unless there's any other comment.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Patrons, go check out the musicality stuff that's up on the Patreon right now because it is excellent. Alicia and I get to show off our other areas of expertise. And If you ever have a video or a topic or a technique that you want us to cover in depth on a future episode, just let us know in the comments below.
Yep. Or message us. That works too.
Yeah. Suddenly I'm doing a lot of gesturing. I don't know why.
That's probably because we're done with the episode.
Yeah. It reminds me of that routine you sent me with the really aggressive whacking partway through.
Yes. The world's most aggressive whacking ever.
Damn. Kate's like, I need it. Send it to me now. All right. So extracurricular video. Everyone open this in a new tab and watch it. Yeah, that's the one. It's worth the whole 10 minutes, I swear. It's great.
Different style. Like what I used to do. Very similar. Dance team stuff. It's a whole different world.
An exhausting one.
Yeah. Like I said the other day when we were talking, this is my retirement dance.
Going to go ahead and share the link to the video in the chat. It helps if I copy and paste it first. I had it open, but had I copied it? No. Back to analyzing. Get to analyzing. I told you my English is...
Yeah, we're just going to go with it tonight. It's fine.
It's cool. Cool, good times. It's one of those days, people. All right, let me make sure I have the chat open. Come to me, Zumba. Come. Hello. Okay. Like I finally figured out how to have the chat window so I can see what y'all are saying. Oh no, my brain did a thing. Instead, it's the bend and slap. Sorry, the outtakes for this are gonna be great. One of the someday we're gonna have Rorschach tests. Is that how you pronounce that? It's the weird psychological. What do you see when you look at this? But it's gonna be a whole bunch of nerdy West Coast swing drama. So here, I'm gonna make a bad joke. So we got Peter Pan, and we got Peter Pan Shadow. I don't know. It's awful. I'm sorry. I should not be allowed to be conscious today. Sleepy edition of the West Coast Swing. So usually we're not both exhausted on the same day, so one can carry.
Yeah.
But tonight we were both like, oh.
Yeah.
We're both dead. Great.
That's okay. Thanks for listening to us still. The knowledge is still there.
Yeah. I'm always surprised, on an off night, and then I edit it the next day. I'm like, hey, I'm still smart when I feel dumb. Awesome.
That wasn't as bad. Wasn't as bad as I thought.
I remember when I took the solo classes at Vega here in Portland back in the day, but the columns and the low-hanging lights are not good for someone almost 6 feet tall.
Yeah. It makes me feel claustrophobic to be at Vega.
Yeah. I kept constantly hitting things.
I think Brittany and I went to take this class and they were like, all right, butterflies. And we're like, but there's a pole there. Butterfly is a type of leap that you do travel with. So.
Yeah. I was about to, the teacher demoed 3 jetés across the floor, and I'm like, I could maybe fit one?
It is. It's a fun space.
Someone will die, and that someone might be me.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like I was going to. I'm significantly smaller.
I imagine myself being one of those cartoons that just jumps aggressively into a light bulb, shatters it, and electrocutes himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop the recording now, so I have less to edit tomorrow.